Welcome back, family, to another episode of LanceScurv. Yes, we're going to speak about something very serious that we need to acknowledge so that we can restore ourselves. Let me explain this thumbnail. And when you look at the title, before we go into the show, what do you notice? Everybody's arms are crossed, which means they're not communicating, which means that we have a whole family here, several generations. Maybe there's some kids in the back that you can't see, but they're not talking. A family that appears to be where everybody has their wits, they dress nicely, some professional, maybe some city workers, but everybody seems to be doing well. And the title of this is The Loss of Extended Family Support, How the Disintegration of the Village Mentality Hurts Black Families. Now, in the title, which was quite long, I had to just say the village mentality hurts Blacks. I didn't have enough room to put families. That's the reason why that is. But let's move on with this, because it's something that we need to really face and talk about. Landon Price, welcome on in, brother. Thank you for being here. Always on time. The Black community in America has long held the unique strength in its extended family support systems, a cultural inheritance from our ancestors that was crucial to our survival during and after slavery. When we were ripped from our homelands, separated from our families, and forcibly stripped of our names, languages, and God, we turned to each other for survival. Despite unimaginable suffering, the community developed a village mentality, a collective approach to life that saw every child as everyone's child, and every person as a vital part of the whole. This village mentality was an unspoken pact of unity that carried Black families through the darkest days of slavery, Jim Crow, and segregation. Today, however, we find ourselves in a vastly different reality. The once solid extended family networks that protected us are crumbling. Our children are no longer seen as the collective responsibility of the community, and many of us no longer identify with one another in the ways we once did. Instead of unity, we often see competition, distrust, and division within the Black community. This disintegration is not by accident, but rather by design, orchestrated by societal forces that have sought to dismantle our communities. These include media portrayal, government policies, and the destructive influences of assimilation into a dominant culture that has little regard for our well-being. As we turn our backs on the practices that once sustained us, we edge closer to a collective extinction that could forever sever us from our true potential as a people. How the breakdown of the Black family was engineered. The breakdown of the Black family in America was not a spontaneous or natural occurrence. It was an engineered process that took place over generations, carefully crafted by forces that sought to destroy the core of our community, our unity. Below are 15 ways in which the extended Black family and village mentality have been systematically eroded, along with historical references and government actions that contributed to this disintegration. Number one, slavery's legacy of separation. The foundation for the destruction of the Black family was laid during slavery, when families were deliberately torn apart. Husbands, wives, and children were sold to different plantations, erasing familial bonds and fostering a culture where survival required focusing on the individual rather than the collective. The effects of this trauma have reverberated through generations, and we have yet to fully heal. 2. Post-slavery economic exploitation. After slavery, sharecropping and other exploitative economic systems continue to place Black families in position of vulnerability. Excuse me for that. I've been talking all day. Families were still struggling for survival with no generational wealth or resources to build on. This left little room for the traditional village support system as economic pressures pushed individuals into isolated survival modes. 2. Now it's 3. I'm sorry. The Great Migration and urbanization. During the Great Migration, millions of Black families moved from the rural South to northern cities. This shift disrupted extended family networks and replaced close-knit rural communities with urban anonymity. The village mentality was weakened as families became more isolated in the pursuit of economic opportunities. 4. Government-sponsored housing segregation. The government's role in the erosion of the Black family cannot be ignored. Policies such as redlining and the creation of segregated housing projects concentrated poverty in Black communities while denying access to homeownership and wealth-building opportunities. These policies fractured neighborhoods and created environments of desperation and crime, further weakening communal bonds. Giant Gain, welcome. I'm glad you're back on in again. 5, welfare programs and the destruction of the Black male role. Welfare programs in the mid-20th century, while necessary for survival, had the unintended effect of pushing Black men out of the household, and I don't think it was unintended. Many welfare policies penalized families with an able-bodied man in the home, leading to the dismantling of traditional family structures and a growing sense of disconnection within families. 6, mass incarceration. The mass incarceration of Black men, fueled by the war on drugs and harsh sentencing policies, has devastated families across generations. Children growing up without fathers, mothers raising children alone, and the community losing role models and protectors all contributed to the unraveling of the village mentality. 7, media representation of Black families. The media plays a significant role in how Black families are perceived, both within the community and by society at large. Over time, portrayals of the Black family as dysfunctional, violent, and broken have reinforced negative stereotypes and led to internalized disdain for the family unit, contributing to the erosion of collective responsibility. 8, economic inequality and job discrimination. Persistent economic inequality has left many Black families in a state of perpetual financial instability. This has diminished the ability of the extended family members to support each other, as everyone is fighting to survive on their own. Job discrimination has further exacerbated this, with fewer economic opportunities available, leaving families fragmented and struggling. 9, education inequality. The failure of the American educational system to properly educate Black children has driven a wedge between the community and the institutions that are supposed to empower it. This has created a sense of alienation among Black youth, further fracturing the bonds that once held families and communities together. 10, the rise of individualism. as American culture emphasizes individual success and self-sufficiency, the collective mentality of the Black community has been overshadowed. The pursuit of the American dream has led many to abandon the village approach in favor of self-interest, further deteriorating community bonds. 11, drug epidemics. Whew. The crack cocaine epidemic of the 1980s and the opioid crisis that followed have wreaked havoc on Black families. Addiction, I was thinking about something. Addiction destroyed households, leading to further disintegration of the extended family structure as family members became consumed with their own struggles. I know that quite well. 12, the decline of community institutions. Once pillars of the Black community, institutions such as churches, community centers, and local organizations have weakened. As these communal spaces decline, so too does the sense of belonging and responsibility toward one another. 13, lack of cultural connection. Many Black Americans have lost touch with their African roots and traditions. This disconnection from cultural practices that emphasize community over the individual has allowed the village mentality to deteriorate, leaving many to adopt Western ideals of independence. 14, government policies on policing. The over-policing of Black neighborhoods and police brutality have instilled fear and distrust within communities, making it difficult for families to unite and stand together. The constant surveillance and criminalization of Black people have fractured community cohesion. 15, consumerism and materialism. The rise of consumer culture has led many Black families to prioritize material wealth over familial wealth. The focus on accumulating individual status symbols rather than building communal wealth has driven a wedge between family members and diminished the collective spirit. That's a lot to think about. But we really don't think about it that way. You know, we have so much thrown at us, and we somewhat lost our footing. This doesn't mean all of us, but many of us. And it's not where you completely lost your footing. Maybe you partially lost your footing. So we can have some Black folks that appear to have it together, but they're lacking in one area in their mental to connect with others. You see how it is? It's like being a little bit pregnant. Either you are or you're not, but even just a little bit of not being aware of what is happening can still have us falling down the slippery slope. Let me take a sip of water and we're going to continue on. Thank you for your patience. How integration further weaken Black families. Earth Angel, welcome on in. Oh yeah, we're going to powwow tonight. Yes, we are. Or rather this late afternoon or 5:30 it started, right? On the East Coast. How integration further weakened Black families. While the civil rights movement was a pivotal moment in the fight for equality, integration into American society came with unintended consequences. The assimilation into mainstream culture came at the cost of our traditional values and ways of life. There are 10 ways below that we're going to speak about in which integration and assimilation into the American way of life have contributed to the breakdown of the village mentality. You see, this is all about the village mentality that we lost. Number one, adopting Western individualism. Integration into American society brought with it the adoption of Western values, including individualism over collectivism. The every man for himself mindset replaced the village mentality and the community began to drift apart. Loss of collective identity. As Black families integrated into mainstream American culture, many lost touch with their collective identity and the importance of community support. The emphasis shifted from we to I, creating isolation. Cultural assimilation. Black families were encouraged to assimilate into a culture that often rejected their values and practices. This assimilation led to a loss of cultural practices that emphasized family and community unity. Erosion of traditional family values. The American model of the nuclear family began to replace the extended family structure that had been central to the Black community. This shift weakened the bonds between extended family members. Economic integration without equity. While integration opened up economic opportunities for some, it did not bring equity for the majority. The focus on individual economic advancement often came at the cost of communal economic growth, leaving many families behind. Educational integration. The integration of schools often led to Black students being taught by teachers who had little understanding or regard for their cultural background, further alienating Black children from their roots and community. Suburbanization. As some Black families gained access to suburban neighborhoods, they left behind the urban communities that had been the bedrock of Black culture and the village mentality. This physical separation weakened the sense of community. Internalized racism. Integration exposed Black families to greater levels of racism, both externally and internally. Internalized racism has led some within the community to adopt the negative stereotypes placed upon them, creating division within the community. The rise of Black capitalism. The pursuit of economic success within the capitalist framework led some Black individuals to prioritize their personal advancement over the well-being of the community. This focus on wealth accumulation often came at the expense of collective growth. And last but not least, rejection of African spirituality. Many Black families have embraced Western religious practices while abandoning traditional African spiritual systems that emphasize communal responsibility and healing. This spiritual disconnection has contributed to the erosion of the village mentality. Now, we stated all of this. We got to get to some solutions, which I'll always try to present. Simplicity, welcome on in. My eyes were elsewhere, and every now and then I look up and the screen is so far, I got to squint, so please forgive me. I like to acknowledge everybody when they come in. Since I've been running my mouth, again, let me take another sip. Because people don't realize that talking can really dehydrate you. Solutions. That's what we need to focus on right now. No matter how challenging it may seem, and even if we don't get all the way there, even in our lifetimes, which I hope that we do, and I feel that we will, I do also feel that many will perish, and I don't want it to happen that way. So this is why, instead of presenting what's obvious and never offering solutions, I always want to try to offer solutions to leave a good taste in everybody's mouth and something left in someone's mind. Because maybe, I mean, we have great scholars here in this chat room and who watch this show far above me. I'm just a person who's bringing the message, right? I'm just a waiter bringing the meal on the plate. I'm not the chef, but there are people who may not understand. And so this is why, you know, those who might be secretly listening, silently listening, we don't know who they are. Maybe they can get a little understanding if we start from the beginning of anything, because most of this, I mean, anybody here in the chat room can, I know I'm preaching to the choir, you know? So, oh, Amasade, or how do I pronounce that? I'm always trying to, but I got it a little bit, right? But thank you for being here in simplicity also. Let me see now. Solutions for restoring the the village mentality. Yes, and the black mentality. It was a Freudian slip that was true. To restore the village mentality that once sustained us, we must take intentional steps to rebuild our communities, strengthen our families, and reconnect with our roots. We have 10 of them here, and these solutions can help us restore what we lost. Re-embrace collective responsibility. We must return to the understanding that each person in the community is responsible for the well-being of others. This means viewing children, elders, and even distant relatives as extensions of our immediate family, and fostering environments where everyone has a role to play in the community's success. Rebuild community institutions. Reinvesting in community institutions such as churches, cultural centers, and grassroots organizations can help bring people together. Sounds like the show earlier, right? These institutions must serve as safe spaces where Black families can connect, support one another, and address issues as a collective. Prioritize family over material wealth. Shifting our focus from material wealth to familial wealth is crucial. This means investing time, energy, and resources into building strong families and ensuring that the bonds between relatives remain intact, rather than prioritizing the pursuit of individual status symbols. Reclaim African spiritual practices. Reconnecting with African spiritual traditions can help restore a sense of unity and collective healing within the Black community. These practices emphasize the interconnectedness of all life and can help revive the village mentality that once sustained us. Mentorship and intergenerational support. Encouraging mentorship between generations is key to rebuilding the village mentality. Elders must pass down wisdom to younger generations, and the youth must learn to value the experiences and lessons of their elders. This mutual respect fosters stronger familial bonds. Support Black-owned businesses. Now, you know how I feel about that. Economic empowerment within the Black community can help rebuild the village mentality by circulating wealth within the community. Supporting Black-owned businesses and encouraging entrepreneurship fosters a sense of collective responsibility for the community's economic health. When I finish reading these, I'll go back and repeat what I said in the earlier show about supporting Black-owned businesses. I'm for it as long as it's a Black-owned, Black supporting business. Reject hyper-individualism. We must consciously reject the hyper-individualism that has been ingrained in us through Western culture. Instead, we should focus on collective success, understanding that when one person in the community thrives, we all thrive. Foster cooperative living. Cooperative living models where extended family members or community members share resources and responsibilities can help rebuild the village mentality. This can include multi-generational households, community farming, or shared childcare responsibilities. Emphasize cultural education. Teaching Black children about their history, culture, and African roots can help instill a sense of pride and collective identity. Schools, families, and community organizations must prioritize cultural education to ensure that future generations do not lose touch with their heritage. Building stronger emotional bonds. Healing the emotional wounds caused by systemic racism and historical trauma is essential to restoring the village mentality. This involves creating spaces for emotional support, open dialogue, and collective healing within the community to strengthen relationships. The disintegration of the village mentality within the Black community is not just a loss of tradition, but a fundamental erosion of the values and systems that have sustained us through centuries of oppression. By understanding the historical context and engineered forces that have driven us to this point, we can begin the work of restoring what was lost. This is not just a matter of survival, but of thriving as a people with a unique and powerful history. Rebuilding the extended family networks that once bond us together will require a collective effort to reject the values that have driven us apart. Values of hyper-individualism, materialism, and division. Instead, we must return to practices that emphasize unity, cultural pride, and collective success. This is not a call to isolate ourselves from the world, but rather a call to reconnect with ourselves, our families, and our communities in ways that allow us to thrive in a balanced and harmonious manner. By reviving the village mentality, we can not only heal from the damage that has been done, but also create a future where Black families and communities are stronger than ever. This restoration is not only cultural, but also spiritual, mental, and physical. It is about creating a future where we stand together, support each other, and build a world where we are no longer strangers in a strange land, but a people united by love, self-respect, and a deep connection to our roots. Now, if anybody wants to join in, I'm going to open the lines before I take a sip of water. You can come on in and speak your mind. And I do believe that we have some more family who's entered. Let me see. It's JD the Great. I like the way you spell great. There you go. And I acknowledge everybody so far. Let me take a sip. That's the link to join on in. If not, I'm still gonna rant a little bit, but I had to put these points together so we get that out there first, right? Let me get a sip of this water, y'all. I don't know what it is, but ever since I moved to Africa, I just started loving water more. I didn't hate it. I just love it more. It's this atmospheric thing going on over here up in the mountains. I don't know what it is other than that. It's got to be something else. But I love the air that I'm breathing now. And all the windows are open all year round. It's a wonderful thing. It's beautiful. But yeah, when I made that little quip about Black-owned businesses, and I said on the show earlier today, right, that let it be where it's really a Black-owned business. Because I can't emphasize enough the importance of men who live in the community, even if you have moved out a little further, not to run away from your people, but because maybe the structure that you desire is not located where you are. But even if you do that, you have to be seen, you have to be a part of that community, and you can never turn your back on it. When I first moved out here to Ghana, West Africa, I couldn't believe the amount of people that chastised me and said I was running. Running? I'm not running. I'm still dealing with issues there and spending much of my days thinking about it and trying to combat certain things in my own way. But no, I wasn't running. I repositioned myself. Because if you only knew the things that I had to go through with my name being, how can I put it? I don't want to say targeted, but that's what it is. There are a lot of little things that with this last name that I've inherited, but cause that name to mean something as a thorn in the side by me talking so much. There's certain obstacles that I've faced that I have never mentioned. And even Mr. Scurv, by having the name by marriage. And we know this to be a fact. And it was told to us factually from different agencies in the United States. Doesn't mean I'm some scary guy or I'm some famous big dude who's a threat for anything, but they micromanage everybody. And whenever you're a catalyst for a thinking that they don't want you to have or want the people to possess just from being who you are, I'm just doing my part. Just like when people say, oh, I thank you for your service to people or veterans who've come back for war, those who say that. Well, I'm just doing my part in service, right? To the people that need it the most. And I see that. And it's out of love. Even when I spank verbally, right? It's out of love. It's not out of any self-hate or I just want to rant on somebody. It's out of love. That's all it is. So when I speak this way, hopefully, I get emails and text messages and voicemails, especially from folks that are younger. And, time slips on quite fast. And when somebody who may be in their early 20s, who may be 40 years younger than me, it's like, wow, something that I said reached you. But it wasn't just me. Maybe it was something else that they had in their subconscious mind or other readings that they did that didn't snap and come together until they heard me. Or maybe I'm setting the foundation and somebody else will say something that would cause them to erupt in this consciousness stream, all this stuff washing down, that aha moment that will cause them to say, hey, all the pieces are coming together, because we all don't get it at the same time. We had different experiences, different upbringings, different emotional makeups. So when you speak to somebody, we have to have patience also, because when we speak to our brothers and sisters, they may not be in a place to even remotely receive what it is that you're saying, even though they speak English and they hear the words, but it doesn't strike them a certain way because they're not in that place yet to be able to be ready to absorb what you have to say. So we have to have patience. And it doesn't mean you preach to people, because there are different ways to reach the masses. Truth be told, it could be through comedy. It could be through music. It could mean maybe moving in silence, but moving in such a loud way. And I don't mean loud with sound, but loud in your actions where people see how you walk upright. Again, I remember after my mother transitioned, she knew such a wide sphere of people in different areas. And the word didn't get out all the way at first because she, when you know so many people, everybody's not going to know right away, especially in a time before social media took hold. And the amount of letters, the amount of people that showed up at the house years later in tears. One woman found out 3 years after she transitioned, and she lived in a different state and hadn't spoken to her in a while. And she was a student of my mother in York College. My mother taught at York College and Long Island University. So that helped to even amplify it toward her later years. And she was so broken. And she told me stories about my mother that I never knew, of how she moved in servitude, which I did know. But when you see the effect come back at you, and the words that are positively the benefits, and for me to receive those, it let me know that I need to be this way also in my own way in time. Of course, at that particular time, I was going through many different transitions. And I knew, as I was told, to relax and let them happen. Relax and let them happen. Because, if you're ever thrown off of a building, which I don't think most of us will have to ever deal with that. But if you tense up in anticipation of the impact of when you hit the ground, now listen, if you're thrown off the 90th story of a skyscraper, well, guess what? Ain't no amount of relaxation going to stop anything. But I knew someone. It was actually the brother of my old girlfriend. And he came around family. And there were other cousins that were envious of him for how successful he was. And they invited him over to have a nice dinner. And they put something in his food. This is family, right? To make him pass out, but not completely. You know, it wasn't to make him pass out completely, but to make him so limp and so weak. There was no resistance when they hit him over the head and drug him out into the hallway from the 6th floor. I wasn't there to see the impact, but I was there quick with my old girlfriend and her family to see him being put into the ambulance. He fell 6 stories, and he says how he remembers it. He remembers seeing the floors go past him really fast. There was nothing he can do. He wasn't paralyzed, but he was too weak to move. And they took his car keys, they took his money, but of course they were apprehended quickly. Greedy family. And so what I mean by that, using that example, he basically said what they gave him helped to save his life because he was completely relaxed. Now, he broke many bones. He was blessed that he didn't fall on his head. He barely missed a spiked iron fence, iron rails. And he was in the hospital for months. For months. So when things happen to us and things of transition happen to us, I don't mean transition of passing away. I mean, just like we're moving from one phase to another, but because we have these challenges that push us there. Well, relax. It may not feel good, but it's coming. And on the other side of that, you'll be stronger, faster, smarter, and a whole lot wiser. But most people don't realize that. But one thing in this particular case with this particular story or focus, the loss of extended family support, how the disintegration of the village mentality hurts Black families, it does. Again, let me point out this illustration. We have families here and nobody's smiling. Everybody has their arms crossed. So even if you go to a family gathering or reunion and your arms are not crossed and you are smiling and you might hug, the spirits of many of us with our family, our DNA sharers, is just like this, what you see on this illustration. We'll be nice to a certain point, but we don't go out all out for each other. And sometimes the reasons we don't is because family tries to use us. So that gives us an excuse to clam up and close up. We got to stop all this mess, y'all, because somebody else enjoys seeing this. If we don't get together as extended family, even when you don't share the DNA or the blood, somehow, some way, 6 degrees of separation, you do. You know, years ago, I found a cousin that I didn't know existed on Facebook. And we traced it back and we realized we are cousins. Now, it made the job a little difficult because my grandfather truly loved women and all the things that can happen. And back in Jamaica, it's not flat plains land. It's lots of mountains. No social media, no cell phone signals, smartphone signals. So you can go over to the next mountain and have a friendship that results in another family. So that further confused that situation. But, you know, everything works out for the greater good. Matthew White, welcome on in, brother. I'm glad to see you here. And wow, nobody came in and I'm here. I want to say a few more things, but I'm not talked out, but there's so much on my mind. I just want to write down some things now. I have some great ideas for some shows this week coming in, but I had to do 2 today. And if you want to, go over to the YouTube channel, the LanceScurv Show, and look at the shorts that I did this morning. I did 10 of them. Probably tomorrow morning, I might wake up and do 15 or 20. I don't know. But I just want to have all pistons firing. And I'm in a place right now where I've been aiming for this for years. And even in the midst of construction and living in a construction site, I'm still getting good footing to do good work, because for me, I dedicate my life to this in my own special way. I'm not looking for accolades, I'm not looking for, all of this narcissistic stuff. I'm the guy who loves the joy of the process. I was drug out into being maybe a little public or a little visible, but for many, many years when I first started this stuff out, people just saw the name and that was it. Who is this LanceScurv guy? So when the interviews started coming in with the artwork and the writing, it pulled me out from under the shadows. But I like to be out, but I'm more effective like an iceberg. The most of it you see or you don't see, and the tip of the iceberg leads to something bigger, Well, anyway, I'm going to wrap it off right now since it is Sunday and it's a little later for me. But I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 tomorrow, even though I have to go down into Accra for a time. I have some people coming here. I got a lot of phone calls to make. I'm going to keep the camera with me, and we're going to record. And I don't know what I'm going to come up with extra, but it's going to be something good. And it's just a joy. I'd rather do frequent shows than just one long one, but just keep throwing the jab, throwing it. Hey, I might wake up in the middle of the night and come back. Who knows? I've been known to do that. But the line was out there, and it's okay if anybody doesn't want to really come in. There'll be a time when you will, and I'll always offer that opportunity. But I'm going to sign off now and get one more bite to eat. What time is it now for me? Oop, it's 10:12. Can't do too much of that. But I want to get a little small bowl of something, And doze off to a good sleep. I got to say, I've been dreaming really vivid. I mean, this mountain air and life, I am sleeping deep. And when I wake up, I feel so good. I mean, I never felt this good before in my life. And I felt good most of my life. I've taken care of myself, but it's those little things that let you know that you did the right thing. But anyway, I'm going to sign off right now. Much love to you all. Thank you for being here. I hope the information helps somebody. Like, share, and subscribe. As always, we're going to get better and better and better and level up. I don't want it to be where anybody's scared to listen to any of these shows, because we're going to level up and clean certain things out. And it's all about the solutions and our progress. And of course, we'll have fun, but we'll take that somewhere else. But here, it's always going to be about dealing with the issues with surgical precision. Thank you all so much. LanceScurv out. We're on to the next one tomorrow, and I can't wait. Have a good Sunday evening, everybody. Peace.
Hello, this is Martha. Actually, today I got to meet my friend Lance. Yes, I got to meet my friend Lance. This is my first time meeting him in person, and he's a very kind man, seriously. I do talk with him on phone, on WhatsApp, but I've never got to meet him. But today, he's just extraordinary. He's very, anything you want to know about life, anything you want to know about just human, anything you want to know about life, please. YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, Twitter, all the social media channels, you got to find him there. He's very inspiring. He's very positive. If you want anything positive about life, please subscribe to LanceScurv. And then every day you got to see different videos, different talks, different topics about life. See you.